My name is Justin Dela Cruz, and I'm the program specialist for the National Center for Data Services, and we are a part of the network of the National Library of Medicine. We've been working on helping people prepare for the NIH policy, organizing talks and resources around the policy. So I wanted to point you to our website so that you have a reference to what we've been doing and can see some of the resources there. I'm going to go ahead and put that chat link in the chat. We also have a new newsletter that we've been using to send out updates of things that are upcoming and things that we've done recently. So I'm also going to put that chat link. And there's a blog there as well, so you can actually get more recent updates in real time as they go up online, and you can subscribe to that on the same link. So before we get started, I wanted to mention that we do have live captioning available for this event. I'm going to put that link in the chat as well. So if you'd like to follow along with live captioning, you'll see it on that link. And as everyone gets settled in, I just wanted to mention that this is more of an interactive session than a webinar. So we're hoping to hear from you, hear your responses, and start a discussion around these topics. I'm going to share a website that we're going to work off of today. It's a Padlet website where you can see the questions from our presenters today, and you can also list your responses. And so the workflow is that we're going to have someone present a question about the policy and how to prepare for it. And then we'll give everyone a chance to go into that website to list a response to it or their thoughts on the question. And then we'll look through and see, you can also upvote popular responses. So if you see something someone else is saying that you like, you can place a thumbs up on it. And we'll see the most voted responses. We'll ask people to respond. So when you're on the Padlet, please use your name and your response so we can call on you to talk further about what you're writing about. And I'll remind you about all of that after we have our first presentation. So I think we can get started. I'd like to pass it over to Stephanie to introduce themselves and get started with our first question, which you'll see on that website link.
Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie Schulte. I'm the Assistant Director for Research and Education at the Ohio State University's Health Sciences Library. And I want to also credit a couple of other folks who have been working with me and I with them. Kelsey Badger from University Libraries, Research Commons, and also Anna Bazaha from the Health Sciences Library, who is on the webinar today. And given that the question that I'm about to ask about and provide context for is related to our CTSA grant. Oh, hi, Kelsey, I see your chat. I wanted to extend condolences. Our director for our CTSA grant passed away unexpectedly about a week ago. So I just want to say how extend our condolences to her family. Her name was Dr. Becky Jackson. So we have been in a fury of work trying to get ready for the NIH policy changes. And we got a request to review a grant for the CTSA renewal, which has already been submitted to my knowledge. And this kind of prompted quite a few questions on our part. The recent center renewal went in, so it wasn't subject to the 2023 policy, but within the text of the submission, they indicated that they wanted to adhere to the 2023 policy. The aims for the renewal also name other large grants that aren't directly connected to the CTSA, but there is a connection and it often feels very overlapping in a lot of ways. For instance, Healing Communities is one of our big grants. The plan that we looked at, indicated that the subawards for pilot programs, which would yet to be, created, would be expected to create a data management and sharing plan, but we have no idea how that would really fit into this bigger plan, in that who would review those, who would keep them accountable, how would that play into this whole thing, should this have been subject to the 2023 policy formally. When we looked at the plan, the impression that we get is that the data collection instruments about evaluating the CTSA grant on the whole haven't been collected yet. So the exact data types are yet to be determined, in addition to those sub-awards that would yet to be determined. We got to thinking that maybe this is something that's going to come up with larger center grants on the whole, in that they fund a lot of sub-awards and they have a lot of uncertainties connected to them. So our question has been, how do you provide, or how are you providing feedback on data management sharing plans connected to larger center grants, like a CTSA renewal? How do you fit in these extra grants that are named, but not part of that particular grant, the CTSA grant or the center's grant? How do you factor that data in terms of who does it belong to, how much accountability would need to be made for it within this particular plan? And then how would the data from the subawards be accounted for moving forward, given they would be developed over the course of the grant? So this is clearly a complex situation, but one where if your institution is really trying to gain more center grants, as ours is, perhaps more of us are going to see this kind of complexity. So I'll leave it at that and see if we have any comments or questions about the particular situation. I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. We'll go ahead and put that link back in the chat. So now we can head over to that page together and provide any further responses, thoughts, or additional questions about that under the first column, Q1. And everyone can have a chance to also vote on their favorite comments. If you, for some reason, can't get to the Padlet, you can also put some thoughts into the chat here in WebEx. So Stephanie, there's this response about the program officer being a good person to ask. Is that something you've done or you thought of doing?
Not yet, no. When you say program officer, are you meaning a general program officer at the university, or are you meaning a program officer for that specific center's grant? I don't know if you can supply that on the Padlet or otherwise in another way.
In the chat, the NIH program officer.
Yeah, we could try to seek that out and see what they have to say. And I'm sorry, I don't know what DCC means and the one reply on the Padlet.
If you could comment on DCC on the Padlet or in the chat. Data Coordinating Center. Okay, we'll give it another minute, and if you could go through and add any comments and also vote on any comments that you particularly enjoy. And also, if you could add your name, that would be helpful if you'd like to talk. You don't have to, though.
I'll add too, I'm reading the responses here as best I can. Something that comes to mind is the fact that this is a renewal. So we've been doing this for a while. So one would expect them to have some evaluation tools available to them. We did not see those. And the way that aims were written, it sounded as if they were going to try to evaluate different aspects of the center than they had done before. So maybe it would be new tools. So I don't know. I guess a more general question then, how common is this in a center's grant that they would state, well, we will evaluate it, but we don't have the tools yet. And that's also something we've heard from individual researchers too. You know, part of the grant is kind of working out the method. So it's kind of the same type of issue.
There's a question in the main chat that says, what type of grant is this one? P30? Question mark.
Honestly, I don't know what the CTSAs are in terms of that designation. Does anybody else here who works with the CTSA know?
It says that CTSAs are U awards. Thank you, Beth.
All right, I don't see a lot of voting, but I do see a lot of comments. Niner, any of the comments jumping out to you on the Padlet? I don't want to like scroll through all of them, but I think you had one yourself.
Yeah, I asked, I don't think that the DMS policy requires you to know the exact instruments, only to describe what you're planning to share. So we will share aggregate data from all evaluation instruments. Data type will probably be, most likely be spreadsheets to be updated in annual RPPRs. I don't think that it matters unless they have like wildly divergent ideas on how they're going to assess. That you don't need to say we're going to use the Beck depression inventory. All you need to know, I mean, I realize this isn't about depression, but I'm not sure that you need to know exactly what assessment inventory you're going to use. You just need to know that you expect to share either the individual level or the aggregate level of whatever that ends up being, and updates will be made during RPPRs. That was my comment. I don't know how much, but that's just my opinion. There's also some questions in there. It's good to confirm whether it's actually required and sort of to what level the requirement might might expect that, which I think sort of goes along with what does the program officer or their contact staff in NCATS, the National Center for something translational sciences something, the institute that funds them, that person might have a good idea of like where are they at in NCATS in the funding institute about what does that look like. So I think maybe that's had the most updates so far, upvotes so far. And John Petters has been suggesting that focusing on what's generated in the program, and note that other DMPs created by funded programs under the programs is just a note that can be added. It's not necessarily key for the center to have all of the pass-through awards plans included in some way, just maybe a discussion of how that'll be handled. And then, is this the level of work that's expected at your library, and are you getting additional funds or staff, or is this a special exception because they're the CTSA, and of course that makes it a big deal?
I can generally respond to that. No, there is no additional funding. No, we do not get funding from the CTSA. This is something for Kelsey at University Libraries. This is her job is data management holistically, not just the NIH policy. So the Health Sciences Library is developing expertise around this particular policy. But I would say we're trying our best to figure out how to move forward collaboratively in a way that is sustainable for us to do. And we have one more person on our team who just began a week ago who will be doing some data work, but it's a piece of her job, not her entire job. She's a research librarian. So her name is Abby Basil. I hope that helps. It's not ideal, and I don't want to say that it's the best way to go, but it's the best we can do right now.
So with that, I think we should move along to our next topic to give time to everyone. There's some interesting stuff in the chat about who's going to be reviewing or assessing DMSPs, so you can check that out if you're interested. But let's move on to Beth Whipple. If you could introduce yourself and your topic. No, we don't hear you yet. No, I'm sorry. I see that you're unmuted, so
Now.
yeah, yes.
Okay, is my sound okay? Okay.
Yes.
So sorry about that. So hi, everyone. My name is Beth Whipple. I'm the Assistant Director for Research and Translational Sciences at the Ruth Lilly Medical Library, Indiana University School of Medicine in Indianapolis, Indiana. So there's a mouthful there. I also want to start out, I don't have a slide, so you just get to see my face as I talk. So I also want to give big shout outs to Levi Dolan, who's also on this call. He's our newly hired data services librarian here at the medical library. And also to Heather Coates, who is the digital scholarship and data management librarian at the University Library here on the IUPUI campus. So we are the three main librarians who have been involved with things on our campus. And so, and especially with the leadership of Heather, I think that we are in a better place than other places are, just talking to folks as far as the things we've been able to prepare and the connections we've been able to make. As I assume all of you know, but I'll sort of say it again, we know that the DMSP is going to be part of the terms of agreement for folks who are receiving these NIH awards. So one of the questions that we've had off and on has been around who at your institution is responsible for reviewing these plans. These are going in before the award has been received. And there is a whole process already in place at many institutions, probably all institutions, for routing and checking everything for grant submissions. So my initial question was around, if you're not sure who's going to review these, who are the likely groups that the responsibility will fall upon? So some initial talks here had been that maybe the departments would be responsible at our institution. Working with folks in our Office of Research Administration, or ORA, we were told they basically can check to make sure it's attached, but they don't have the capacity or the expertise to be reviewing all of these data management and sharing plans. So I also wanted to know if librarians were involved in the process. And I do see some responses on the Padlet that at some places librarians are involved, some places not. So I wanted to share one of the interesting things to me that came out of some of the work that we've been doing. I'm going to share in the chat one link. So this is our Indiana University website for just promoting and sharing the policy. So this is something that Heather had been working towards, where we actually got it not within a LibGuide, but on the Indiana University official website under our research division to be able to put up this information. Also, under Heather's leadership, she's recruited what we're now calling the IU Research Data Management Plan Working Group. And the folks who are included in this group would be the three of us as librarians. There is a newer data services librarian in Bloomington, sort of the main IU campus, who's also involved, as well as folks like general counsel, data stewards here at the university, folks in ORA, so that would be for research administration for both proposals and awards, for research contracting, for our HIPAA privacy officer and data steward for health data is also in the group. So again, trying to pull together folks from various areas of the research infrastructure of our university to sort of think about, okay, what are the materials we need to craft and make for folks? What should go into the presentations about the policy and plan that we need to share with everyone? Also getting some expertise across the university about potential guidance and sample templates or language that we could provide to folks. So this group has been meeting now for many months, and we've done a lot of the things I just mentioned. One of the interesting things that came up recently was, just by nature, I think, of Heather being able to pull together the right folks in the group and people who talk to one another. It turns out that a few of these people already sort of informally get together to discuss DUAs, or data usage agreements, that go into some of the awards. And the reason they've gotten together is they realize they all view these award submissions from different perspectives, from their different expertise. So we're now thinking maybe this type of group would be what sort of the group that would be appropriate to review the data management and sharing plans, because it represents just a breadth of knowledge and expertise across the institution. Previously, we talked about it being the responsibility of various departments, and I think some departments may be more responsive to that than others. So that's kind of where we are right now. So I don't have a clear answer, but those are some of the areas that we've been thinking about. And I really am appreciative of just some of these different models that we've seen, and recognizing that folks do have different perspectives within the institution, and we recognize this policy is a big lift for our institution, and trying to figure out what kinds of additional supports need to exist within the research infrastructure for our folks to successfully submit these and get funded.
Thanks so much. I see a few responses. I wanted to call on Sarah Samuel, if you're able to speak. Maybe, Michelle, could you help unmute Sarah Samuel to hear from that response about structuring to try and get PIs listed as responsible for
Yes. Hi.
generating a review? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi. Yeah, Sarah Samuel, University of Michigan. I think I had stuck this response in here a while ago, like after the session was first announced, but basically at our institution, I think that we've sort of come to the same conclusion. Like there just isn't expertise, like in the grants research administration offices to be able to do like a true review of the plans prior to going out. So at this point, essentially what we're going to be probably recommending is for the oversight piece, essentially that the PIs are going to be the responsible ones for just general oversight of the plan. And then if any sort of review is going to happen, it's just going to be on that completeness piece, making sure that there's a plan there and that it has the elements that have been listed by NIH. So that's it.
And would that be from the Office for Grants and Sponsor Research and stuff, or would that be for the library?
That would not be at the library. I mean, so the library's role would be if folks want to consult with us, like while they're writing their data management and sharing plans, sure, we can do that. But we're not anywhere in the workflow for like grant submission in the first place. And so I cannot see that changing. And I don't think I want to see that changing, you know, we don't have capacity, right? But I think consultations is something that we'd be offering prior to things being submitted.
So like as needed when people request a consultation.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Thank you. I see something else from Lauren Begley, maybe. I don't know how to pronounce your name, sorry. But Michelle, if you could find Lauren to unmute if you'd like to speak on reviewing DMSPs from people in the library who are doing reviews.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I work in the library, and so it's me and one other person who offer reviewing of data management and sharing plans. We are trying to have them go through DMP tool initially to request feedback that way, but we understand not everybody wants to do it that way, so we'll do a review if somebody emails us. We do have a policy of a turnaround time of a week, but we understand that the likelihood of that actually happening is low, so we'll try and get it like feedback as fast as we can. But as far as like the requirements, the only people who actually always see the grant will be the grant award department. And as much as we have a relationship with them, they're only looking for glaring issues, and they're not doing a detailed review. And they're not going to be doing what we do, and we're not going to be doing what they do, but they know to contact us, and we know to contact them if there's an issue.
And what area of the library are you in? Are you in the data services capacity?
Yes, data services. Yep, data management.
And do you mind sharing like how big your institution is?
Yeah, so pretty big. We're at the University of Pennsylvania, so pretty
Okay.
big big medical campus. So a lot of grants going through.
A lot of requests or reviews?
No, unfortunately not. We're trying. We have not really been getting a whole lot of people getting requests for that, but we also have just started like pushing for this recently, because they didn't have anybody until like 6 months to a year ago who even like was able to do this at the library. So we're, as Linda Kellum, who is the other person put in the chat that I work with, we also draw on subject librarians at UPenn to make sure that we give a holistic review of the DMSP. But yeah, we haven't had much success yet just because we're new at this and people don't know we offer this yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd be interested to hear if others in the chat or commenting on Lauren's post to say if you also have librarians reviewing in this capacity. That'd be interesting to hear about. Is there anything happening in the chat, Genevieve, that we should highlight?
There was some mention of DMP tool, which we did briefly talk about. I think there's a really great suggestion of having sort of an alias email specifically for the DMP tool support. We currently at our institution have one just for the HSL or the data services librarians. I do think it's probably pragmatic to have one specifically for DMP tool. And while I don't see it in the chat, I do have a question for the audience, and I'm just interested if anyone is looking to hire someone for DMP reviews, or if someone's role is going to change permanently to support this new policy. And if you have any thoughts, just put it in the chat and I can monitor that as well.
Thank you.
And it does look like there's a message in the chat that says DMP tool. Let's see where it went. Oh, it came in very quickly. There's a DMP tool NIH working group addressing the NIH data management and sharing plans or policy and plans to create more NIH IC specific templates in the near future. And Linda said we use lib answers to route requests for most of what we do, not just DMP review. Very smart. And what have you given up as far as other services to make time for these reviews? That is a very interesting question. So in my case, my role has expanded a little bit, but I'm sure other people on the call have different sort of use cases on how they are sort of distributing work to, to meet the requirements of this new policy, whether that's perhaps like tabling another project and sort of focusing on this, or just overall expanded roles. So I'd be interested.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I might throw that question back to Beth because there's another comment from Tess. What are your current thoughts on your working group on balancing review and holding up grant submissions? We have trouble getting grants submitted with enough time to review, get feedback back before the deadline. So that also ties into, how are we balancing out things in terms of work or new positions or for other people to help out?
So that's a good question, Tess. So, and just to speak to some of the DMP tool stuff, we actually don't use DMP tool. We created an in-house tool. We've actually acquired here at the School of Medicine our faculty who are federally funded to complete a DMP for the past 3 years now. And we use our own tool because we were able to develop some house-built APIs to pull in active awards for our folks, which for going forward now, that doesn't really make any sense because people are doing, submitting a pre-award. But that's the tool that we've been using. So with this working group, we still are unsure if they would be the ones to actually review it. But looking to the folks who've been involved with the data usage agreements, I think that would be a good model, and just asking them how much time it is. When I asked them, is this sort of on top of everything else that you do? Like, obviously you're using your job expertise, but it seemed like you recognized this was a need and came together versus being told you need to do this. So since the working group has been together, it basically has been a labor of love. So no one is getting additional money to be part of this. But the executive associate dean for research within the medical school saw one of the announcements about the plan and about the sharing piece and said, hey, like, is the school of medicine good to go, or do we need additional resources? Which was our perfect opportunity to say, hey, this is some of the stuff that we've developed, but yes, like, if we want to do this well, there needs to be additional resources from the institution. So I don't have an answer for you yet, but I think the fact that some of the higher level folks within our institution are asking us about this, and we're able to at least give them an answer, show them what we have done, what we can provide, but also the need that exists. As like I'm an optimist anyway, but I think it helps to know that sort of we've built some of those connections and collaborations already, so that by the time the ask is coming, we are able to actually give an answer to them. So we'll see how this shakes out yet. But I would guess, I don't know what the timeline is around the DUA reviews, but I would imagine if we can do a similar process for the the DMSPs, that at least, if we can get that into a workflow, that potentially that could be a solution.
Thank you. There are still some new comments coming in, but I think we should move on to the next topic, so we have time for that, and then we can go back and review any very popular comments or questions after that. So we'll go ahead and pivot to Lena, or is it Lena? Sorry, I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, my name's Lena, but either way is fine.
Okay.
So share my screen. Okay. So yeah, I and as I just said, my name is Lena Bowman. I'm the data librarian for Hofstra University School of Medicine and Northwell Health. To address the questions of scale that have been coming up, our system has 9 librarians currently, and we actually are hiring for one, so if anyone's looking for a hospital librarian role. Most of them are hospital librarians. I'm the only one dedicated to data. Northwell Health is a large health system mostly on Long Island in New York, though it's spread all over the New York City region, and it has 79,000 employees. So my question is about what others are doing on technical education that researchers will need for the new data management and sharing policy, and I will also share what we have done so far. So as I've worked on preparing the researchers for the new NIH policy, I've been thinking a lot about the kinds of education the library needs to provide researchers in order for them to be successful in sharing their data, including technical skills they may never have needed before. As I outlined here in the smart art, I've come to think of this as a problem that sort of cascades backwards the more you think about it. In order to share data effectively, researchers need to be able to transmit their data sets, which are often very large, to repositories. This is often done via FTP, which many researchers have never used and is often a bit clunky. Going a step further, in order to have data to transfer, the researchers need to have effective storage options. Especially in a large health system like Northwell, which is extremely administratively complicated, it can be hard for the researchers or us in the library to get a handle on the options they have available and connect them to the right people in our various IT offices. Thus far, we have been gathering information about this from a number of different sources. We have brought a staff member in research IT into our coordinating meetings with other offices on this issue. However, I've also had success speaking to those outside research IT for help, at least with information. One of the most helpful information gathering conversations I had was with the head of business analytics, who had maybe the strongest overview of the data infrastructure in the system as a whole. I would encourage librarians to look outside traditional research personnel for technical help. We have also spoken to a few researchers who are already sharing data to find out what practices they are following. The picture that has emerged is something like a patchwork or organic accretion of different methods that researchers have come up with in their labs over time, rather than a unified policy. Given the increased number of people who will be sharing data, there is clearly a need for improvement in technical education. So we haven't come up with a solution, but this is the progress we've made, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts and suggestions.
Thank you very much. So, please share your comments on the Padlet or in the chat. I see, well, the only name I see is Jonathan Petters. So Michelle, maybe you can unmute Jonathan to talk about their approach on their campus.
You can't hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, there we go. All right. Very good. You always make sure about that. Okay, so generally, so here at Virginia Tech, we run a research data repository. So this kind of question often comes up when people are trying to deposit data with us and trying to share their data they're depositing in our repository. So, and often people will, if they have very large data sets their data comes from, they will try and give us a large data set. And I dissuade them as much as I can. So trying to explain that very few people are going to be able to download your 1 terabyte of data through the internet, and who's going to make use of that anyways. So trying to make it clear who's going to benefit from you putting up all this data. And I think you could post these kind of questions, have these kind of questions up on a website where people are considering sharing. It could just be sharing guidance and being provided, but giving real, you already read Lena in your slides, important questions about uploads and download speeds. These are really important to consider. I would probably just have it as a list of questions, like a checklist. All right, you're trying to download something large. Well, let's consider the value of doing that. Just the amount of time it takes to upload a terabyte of data to a sharing point is a lot. If nobody can download it, you're wasting everybody's time. I'll stop there.
Thank you. So that seems like a kind of like catch them before they try to share a terabyte.
Yeah, I mean, a fair number of our researchers are actually doing big data research, so they do analyze that kind of, large amounts of data. So the and since we don't have an institutional repository, the issue for me is less that I need to manage their upload and more that they need to be able to do it. It's partially also an infrastructure issue. Like, we've had several researchers complain that they don't have fast Wi-Fi speeds in the research building. And apparently the Ethernet is no faster. So they have to take their research off campus in order to upload it, which is, I think, not something they want to tell the hospital because they'll freak out. So yeah, all sorts of fun problems.
There's another comment. After building capacity by hiring new staff members, the library system is starting to offer workshops for departments and schools, and also one-on-one consultations for individual assistants. So I guess trying to offer, well, I like building capacity as the first point. Trying to offer workshops, I'm guessing on like a regular basis, or raising visibility that way, and then trying to address one-on-one consultations. So I'm guessing, Lena, like when somebody has this problem because they come to you, are you like focused on how to get to them first kind of thing?
It's also like a question of so the number of researchers who are doing data sharing now is mostly restricted to the genomic researchers who are under genomic data sharing, and they've kind of figured out what they're doing. Like, we talked to one researcher who's like, oh yeah, I have a hard drive. I take it off to my apartment and then I have an FTP on a computer there. I'm like, whatever works, man. But they've all worked out their like little workarounds and they're doing their thing. But then, when like all the rest of them start trying to figure out how to share their data, we don't want there to be a sudden rush of technical issues that overwhelms whatever resources we have available. So I think we're trying to figure out what is the most necessary training we can give to them and how can we do it in a way that's like compliant with the hospital policies, because clearly what the researchers are doing now, they're just not complying and doing whatever. So yeah.
I'm wondering if anyone has had successful connections with IT or other offices on trying to help with the technical side of things in this kind of scenario. And then as we wait for that, Genevieve, is there anything in the chat that's been happening? I think they're still talking about.
Excuse me, there were some shared resources about just existing DMPs, which I think are super helpful. Someone mentioned Globus for using a tool for using and uploading large data sets, but unfortunately not all repositories use this. Let's see. And then Beth mentioned that she recommends folks check out Secure My Research. I haven't heard of that resource, but I will check it out. And I think Stephanie said, I think what Lena is describing is extremely common, and IT departments are slow to handle when clinical data is a priority. I think that is very true. A question that I have is, I'm just wondering if a conversation is more about just the size of a data set, but are you also talking about things like data documentation and making sure other people can use that data set when thinking about a repository, or is it strictly about the size of it and who and what repository has capacity for it?
Actually, I'm thinking more about like, are the researchers familiar with, using FTP? Are they familiar, with the with using the data storage we have on site, with using sort of programmatic ways to document their data if they have, however many thousands of files that they're analyzing. If they haven't had to do data sharing before, they just might not have bothered with a lot of that stuff. So I'm thinking more about like these technical hurdles specifically, though of course, also we have to think about data documentation and metadata, but the question was more specifically about technical hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I see Lisa Federer mentioned this NIH's Strides program might be something to check out. In the chat, there's a link to that. And then, yeah, just other comments on this, definitely need some tools to help PIs come up with DMS plans and technicals. Point of contact to specifically work on certain types of data. So I think there's agreement that I've seen in the chat too, that this is a problem. Yeah.
Tobin's statement that it's hard to convince people that they need these technical skills until they run into a roadblock. Which I definitely think that speaks to the the need for some of these technical tools when it comes to data transfer.
Yeah, it's not a problem until it's a big last minute problem. I think we have a couple of minutes to check out. We do have another column for other questions, or if there are other comments that have received popular response since we've addressed those topics, we can look back at that. Nina, does anything jump out at you from the other questions column specifically?
There's a lot of sharing going on about how are people communicating with researchers and research staff about the policy. In addition to that, there's an opinion poll. Do you think that most NIH-funded faculty and researchers know about the changes by now? Which has, I personally feel is very apt from Lena, that there's vaguely aware something's coming, but they don't exactly know the details. And then a general comment with a lot of thumbs up to it that de-identifying data seems to be a point of concern. And so if anyone wants to share some resources on that, I know there are quite a lot of very good resources on de-identification. Someone reminded me about one just last week at Southeast Data. It was the NIH for it's something the NIH NLM actually, something NLM had put out for de-identifying. Thank you, NLM Scrubber. I knew someone, if I babbled enough about it, a thing that they put out, that someone would type it up for me. Thank you for saving me, Marla, Julie, Jennifer. NLM Scrubber would be a useful thing to brush up on and use for that, for those who haven't seen that. Also, how do you advise your PO? They might mean PI on evaluation of some of the nichier things like metadata and data standards. And I think most everything else is leaning towards sharing how are you making people aware of the policy, and there's a lot of good sharing going on in that.
There are comments since you started about going to faculty meetings and trying to give people reminders that the policy is upcoming. Although people tend to say they'll just figure it out later when they learn that it isn't hitting until January. So that doesn't seem that helpful for us, but I have seen that kind of energy before.
I feel like once cycle 3, the October-November deadlines that we are currently kind of in the middle of, and you can say all upcoming deadlines, or almost all, there are very few cycle 1 deadlines. That is to say the early deadlines of the year. There's only like special resubmission deadlines before January 25th. So as soon as the current batch finishes, you can say the next batch coming, anything from now on. Maybe that makes a difference, but yeah, it's kind of disheartening for us.
Yeah. So I think we will try and close it out. I know there's a lot of comments still coming through. We're going to save the chat and compile the links and hopefully put together some handout or guide of resources. And also this Padlet will stay up for review. There's some links in there. And we'll have the recording for this session up on our event page pretty soon. So I just wanted to close out with this comment, which you mentioned, Nina. What methods are you using to communicate with researchers, presentations to schools, newsletters, webinars? A newsletter, trying to teach workshops on DMPs. Not much yet. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. There were some mentions of upcoming things. I think Lisa pointed to some upcoming workshops, Data Curation Network, Washington University, some other comments there. We'll also be putting together more trainings on this with the National Center for Data Services. We're going to have a very long session on everything you need to know about the policy, so look out for that being advertised soon. And we also have some on-demand webinars and things we've done previously, and the discussion from before that we have. So a lot of those resources are on our website. I'll just leave that in the chat too as a closing link. And thank you all for participating and joining us today. Really enjoy these discussions, and hopefully you got some good information out of it. I will email out some more information from this session too, and thank you all for joining.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.